Okay, now we're rolling. You all know exactly what this is, right? Simple bullet. I found this in a random box at my mother in law, her house, who passed away. It was from her late husband, Walt. I used to work for him. He was a nice guy. As I was digging through some old junk pile of old tools and nuts and bolts, there was a bunch of bullets in a can. So I brought it home and I was kind of looking at this and thinking about the fact that this simple bullet, any bullet, is designed to kill something, designed to kill either a person or an animal. And really, there's no exceptions to that. It is designed to penetrate flesh and execute. Now, I'm not shy about these things. I grew up with firearms. My father taught me to shoot when I was about 9 years old. And when I was 12, he took me out to shoot the 303. I may have been younger, but let's just say the 303 had a kick. That was a British rifle that his dad brought home from World War II, along with the 32. And my father was not a gun nut or anything like that. He was just a gun owner. The whole time I grew up, there were rifles and a couple of rifles and a pistol in the house. My mom was a reserve officer for in the early 80s. So it was I was 5 to 8 or something. But I knew the firearms were in our house and I never had any interest in using them. I never touched them. I was told not to and I didn't. Other than that, my experience with firearms was just going camping. My father took me out, taught me to shoot, taught me respectfully how to not shoot things that I didn't intend to eat. We went camping one time out in eastern Oregon, down by Trout Creek Mountain Range. We went out rabbit hunting. We talked about skinning and eating a rabbit. I don't know why I really went. Maybe to impress my dad. Maybe because I didn't really intend on actually shooting it. But as we got out there and walked around, I found a bunch of old glass bottles and neat things and antiques. And then all of a sudden, I look up the road and there's a rabbit. He runs out and he's sitting there in the middle of the road. He stops, looks up, stares right at me. I was like, oh, he said, there it is. I raised up my rifle. I think I had a 22. Aimed it. And I said, I just can't do it. And my dad looked at me and from what I remember at least, he smiled. It's like, that's all right. I don't blame you. And we walked back and ate top ramen at the campfire, right? Uh, Other than that, I'm not a hunter. However, I highly respect hunting. It's something I'd love to do. I'd love to be able to hunt my own meat, at least to replenish and replace the meat that I do eat, because I'm not a vegetarian by any means or a vegan, but I try to eat meat sustainably and respectfully. Don't want to get into that discussion because there's always someone who is a full blown vegan. I understand it can be done, it's just not for me yet because I have an eating disorder. I'll just tell for the people who have told me to go vegan, my eating disorder is I don't eat enough. I've always had this thing. My mom has it too. And I'm just not hungry and I don't eat enough. I've tried everything. In fact, that's how I started drinking during COVID. I found it helped stimulate my appetite. And then I'd drink more and it didn't work. And next thing you know, hey, I'm drinking and not eating. So by not eating, I'm, you know, uh, needing to eat meat more. But that isn't the point here. And I honestly probably shouldn't even get to the point, because after talking about myself and my eating problem, it's very hard to move straight to Gaza and talk about a complete apocalypse that's going on over there right now, which I'm sure that instantly changed a few people's minds about listening to this discussion, because I'm all for firearms, I'm all for self defense, I'm all for hunting, and I believe that a lot of times reality is messy and there are going to be innocent civilians that are killed as casualties of war. However, what's going on right now in the hospitals on the Gaza Bank are horrendous. I want to start off by saying this, for some reason, is extremely controversial right now. Having an opinion about Palestine, instead of being in a full blown panic because of Israel, allowing them to defend themselves. I completely understand the need to protect yourself against Hamas. It is a rogue fighter group that does horrendous things. But, and I know the word but just, makes people cringe, because the truth is, there seems to be kind of an authoritarian like response to this. We are going to bomb Gaza to the ground. 42% of residential buildings in Gaza have been bombed, from what I've read, or damaged. This is almost half. We're looking at the statistics still, but about 6,500 people, as of earlier today, have been killed in the Gaza Strip. About half the people that live in Gaza are young, because of the problems that they have, and because a lot of people die young, and they have a lot of kids, of course. But half of the kids, or half of the society being kids, out of 6,500 people, somewhere close to 3,000 kids have been hurt or killed. Well, rather, probably more like 2,500 to 3,000 children have been killed, but many more are wounded. Could be in the tens of thousands for all we know. The hospitals have no fuel. They have no way to get medicine. The trucks coming in that are supposed to give, quote, aid are very limited, and it's just for, kind of a public spectacle, if you will. Now, pardon me, and I'm not going to edit that out because I don't edit, but you can't tell me that killing 6,500 civilians and only 13 confirmed Hamas fighters is an acceptable margin of civilian casualties. Now, all of the human rights organizations have spoken out about this. All of, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and as well as the UN. And when the UN chief said that this didn't happen in a vacuum, Israel accused him of being basically a traitor and said he should be fired, or resign, rather, and that they revoked visas for all UN members that were there on peacekeeping missions. Basically, Israel wants to wipe Gaza off the face of the earth. And that's why I felt like I had to talk about this. And I started off with the bullet and American rights and guns, because there's a gun culture in America. But Americans act like people in other countries are ruthless. There was a shooting a couple hours ago, from what I understand. Before I made this video, I didn't want to even talk about that at all, because I haven't looked at a single thing about it and don't really want to. I guess it was out in Maine. A firearms instructor one of the responsible ones, from what I understand. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but a lot of people were hurt. And my my brother mentioned it in like a group text, and I was just and what I told him was, it's really hard right now to even have a response to that after learning not just about the thousands of young children, but seeing the hundreds of babies that are rushed into the ICUs or that are just dead on arrival, and a hospital that has no power, no generators, they have no medicine, they have no ventilators. People are just laying in the lobby and dying. And meanwhile, the whole Western media is just completely fucking ignoring it. There are only a couple of channels, and I know people will say they're propaganda. Sure, there's Al Jazeera, but there's also, Channel 4 News, a couple of others that are covering this situation very respectfully and responsibly, and covering the fact that many other countries around the world are saying Israel needs to chill the fuck out. And look, the point is, I need to make it clear, it's not just about Israel, it's not about Judaism. And you saying that Palestinians should not be murdered for the sake of Hamas is not anti Semitism. And I've never seen such a, what's the word? I can't even think, a vitriolic response. Like the Israeli government, I know that they're right wing. I've heard this for a while. I don't pay much attention to what goes on over there as far as the government, other than knowing that Netanyahu is a complete asshole. But when I heard some of the things that they were saying, I figured I had to say something about it because it bothers me. It fucking pisses me off, actually, that they assume that another race of people are animals. They've said it. And the irony here is that America, just a few weeks ago, it was the president talking about, how anti Islam hatred is a bad thing. What do you expect, Mr. President? Mr. Joe Biden? Do you really think that people aren't going to be anti Islam after what happened? If Israel isn't called out for the bullshit they do, they're just going to continue to roll right over Palestine, what should be Palestine. And I know it's a complicated topic, people say, and others would say it's not too complicated. I'd say it took me all of a, you know, paying attention for a while. I've read and watched as much as I can about the Middle East in the past, but recently I've kind of stepped it up a notch. And the history is complicated, but it's one of oppression. Palestinians have been oppressed, and I know that a lot of people become violent when they're oppressed, and that's not a justification. But what might be is what's been going on in the West Bank with the settlers. There are Americans who have been, this is, true fact that Americans from New York have moved to Israel and said, I'm a Jew, I'm going to settle on the West Bank. And they've moved out and kicked Palestinians out of their homes to live in their homes. This is kind of above and beyond. It's not creating something for yourself, it's stealing from others. Sometimes I'm not sure how to feel about all these things. Human nature seems to be to fight about very silly things to the outside, but very important things to the people who fight about it. And often this silly thing is religion. Maybe silly isn't the right word because there's religion, then there is land that is strategic. So for most of the world, when we fight over land, it's either for a strategic position or, something of value, resources. And that's exactly what it is for Israel, which has been supported by the West for a very long time. And I really had to speak about this because we're sending over American, you know, aircraft carriers and destroyers to the Middle East. And I am not all down with this at all. This reeks of what happened during 9/11 when we were sent into war on false pretenses because of an attack and blaming the wrong people and allowing civilians to die because of that. I'm not saying that the wrong people have been blamed in this case. We know Hamas did this. What I'm saying is that often the reaction, the overreaction, can be swift and can be much heavier in proportion. I would imagine the ratio of children in Israel was much smaller than what's going on in Palestine, which doesn't excuse it. But what I'm saying is, I'm saying even if a few hundred children died, we've had a few thousand dead in Palestine. It's time to stop, ease back, and figure out a different way to take out Hamas. Because people don't realize Hamas lives in the tunnels, they live underneath. There are, I believe, up to 300 miles of tunnels underneath Gaza alone. 300 miles. Think about this for a minute. There are in complete built, concrete filled, walled rooms with full lighting and everything down there. And the idea that you can just starve them out means that you starve out everyone in the entire Gaza Strip. And evacuating 2.5 million people is ridiculous because it's a slaughter, it's genocide, in a way. That sounds extreme and leftist, but I don't give a shit. Any fucking humanitarian based person who sees the reality of war understands this. If you doubt that, apply the same rules to Ukraine, a larger superpower like Russia invading, and think about the way that the Western media covered Ukraine. How horrible it was that people were getting hurt. Meanwhile, in Israel, one hospital gets bombed that's on the news and they deny it. But there are over 62 other, I think it was either 62 or 67 different healthcare facilities and hospitals that have been bombed since this started on the 7th. That is true. You can look it up. Amnesty International, the World Health Rights Watch, several different countries say Israel has been breaking every law. And now, because of what the world, the UN chief said, they've banned visas for people to go in and actually see what's going on. And the Western media and the Western governments are completely paying for it. Which means that if you're an American and you say, I don't give a shit, your brothers and sisters are going in there. Maybe they're cousins, maybe a distant relative, maybe just a friend, but somebody is going out on a warship. And U.S. bases have already been attacked. And I know some people have the attitude of, well, fuck them, we'll kick their asses. That's not going to work. We don't want war with Iran. We don't want war with Hezbollah. They have 150,000 rockets aimed at Israel. They don't want to have to use them. They don't want to fight. They want to live in peace. The whole idea of war is to, unfortunately take land. And that's usually what results from war. But if Palestinians have no land, there's no way to resolve this issue. And a two-state system seems to be the only viable issue. I don't know. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure that somebody's triggered thinking I'm a sympathizer. Fuck Hamas. They can suck my ball sack. No, not at all. But what Israel is doing is wrong. It is vile. It breaks all of the UN treaties and international law of how to conduct warfare. They are leveling Gaza right now. And I feel like if I'm silent about it, this is worse than what Russia's doing. I mean, Russia, yes, they're invading Ukraine and attacking cities, but they're shooting at a lot of the times they're shooting at resistance fighters, right? Here in Gaza, they don't even know what the fuck they're shooting. It's all done with missiles. Which, knowing they're in tunnels, you think, okay, are these entrances to tunnels? Do they know what's there? But they're not clarifying. And then you see the ground footage of apartment buildings completely collapsed, and it's disgusting. It makes me fucking sick. And I know most people don't want to see it, don't want to pay attention, but there are places to see what's going on the ground. It's very hard to deny the truth these days when you see bloody civilians. Comparing it to what happened in Israel, I don't think it's fair. I really don't. Hamas needs to be dealt with, but killing babies in Palestine, what should be Palestine, is completely unacceptable. It made me cry for the first time in a long time seeing this footage and knowing what's coming when they do a ground invasion, as all of these hundreds, if not thousands, of tanks that are poised on the border. This is going to get nasty before it gets better. And I think about the precious nature of human life, and it's just so sad to see it fucking lost on all sides. Over fucking what? A belief system. Religion? Really? You think you live on holy land, but you're willing to kill for it? The way I see it, if any religion is true, there's definitely a hell for people who kill in the name of their own belief system. It's bullshit. And that goes for everyone over there. They're nuts. I say, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know or feel like we should even deal with the shit. As a Western nation, I think the U.S. should back the fuck out, send our troops home, and let Israel work it out on their own. But that's me. Only because I know that the resentment that's built up against the U.S. is only due to our involvement in places we shouldn't be. And for anyone who says, well, we've got to protect the region, why? Why? We live here in the USA. Let's fix our bridges. Let's take care of our own infrastructure. Bring it all back home. Get the troops over here fixing shit. You know what I'm saying? Tax dollars go for the troops. They do all these workouts and exercises. Then they go off to battles. Let's build some shit. It sounds ridiculous, right? Why? But it's not going to happen because that's the world we live in. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I honestly don't know what to do about any of it. Like, if human beings decided to change things, how would we do it? I don't know. I'm sure you'll tell me. Peace out.